Hey guys, Joe Miles here with Osseo Gear. This is the Mission Whitetail podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into what it truly takes to kill these mature bucks. We're going to step outside the box and look at the why for gear, tactics, training, and more importantly, the mindset from over 35 years of chasing these magnificent animals all over North America. Thank you for following along and welcome to Mission Whitetail.
All right, guys, welcome back. Mission Whitetail. Got a good episode today. Adam Hayes is back on, and we're going to get into the ups and downs of hunting season. You know, we talk about it a good bit about how the season is a marathon, not a sprint, meaning not every year you're going to come out of the gate and just knock one right down. And it even goes further than that. It's the longer you do this and the longer you chase a particular deer, or that's your MO, that's what you're after. You know, you want to find one buck and hunt that one buck. And that's what you do season after season. It can be 1, 2, even 3 seasons where you don't actually kill a deer, and that's perfectly okay. You know, it gets very, very challenging when you're hunting one particular buck, especially when things happen outside of your control, and we're going to get into some of that. So, Adam, welcome back, brother. How you been?
Appreciate you inviting me back, man. I've been hunting my tail off. Don't have much to show for it right now, so I guess this is a perfect episode to talk about the highs and lows of bow hunting, but we got lots of good season left still.
Oh yeah, you guys go in Ohio all the way to the end of the middle of or beginning of February, right?
First Saturday of February.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're after a specific animal and you still got a tag and your deer is still alive, I mean, I like late season more than I like the rut. You know, just when you're after a specific animal, they're starting to get back on the food and get, you know, kind of, you know, regular and predictable and patternable again. But the game definitely changes late season because, you know, these deer have been hunted for 3 months hard and they're on edge, you know. You can't get away with a lot of the stuff you might get away with in October. Now it seems like late season, boy, you make a mistake and it's all over. So you really got to be dialed in, which we should be after hunting for 3 months. We should have our shit dialed in and it should just be second nature right now. But yeah, it's a great time of the season coming up, that's for sure.
Well, do you have some cold weather coming? I mean, I haven't looked at the Ohio forecast.
I looked at the 2-week forecast, and I mean, there is some cold weather, but it seems like it's kind of a couple of days in the 30s with the chance of snow and then back up to 40, 50 and rain. I didn't see any prolonged cold weather, but I mean, after this past week, anything's possible, man. I was watching the forecast before I went to Illinois, and I thought it was going to be, you know, decent weather. And man, we had 2 days where it was below zero in the morning with the wind chill. It got nasty,
man. Yeah, and I mean, I guess the ideal thing is, you know, 4 or 5 inches of snow and some below 20 days back to back to back, and that'll do it. I mean, they've got to come eat.
They do, and I mean, you know, whether it gets that extreme or not, they still got to eat. You know, these big mature bucks, you know, can lose, I think, up to a third of their body weight during the ruts. I mean, they got to get built back up. So, I mean, they're going to be feeding, and that's really all they're going to be doing. You know, I think this rut has just been stretched out for, you know, going on 6 weeks now. It seems like that trickle rut that everybody was talking about was kind of exactly what happened. And instead of having a focused period, you know, of a couple of weeks when all or most of the does are going to come into heat, it's just been stretched out to, you know, like I said, 5 or 6 weeks. So it's kept the mature bucks busy. And, you know, last week I was in Illinois all week chasing a deer, and I think he got locked up with a doe, you know, right when I got there, and completely changed his pattern for 5 or 6 days. And now he's back on camera again this morning before daylight. But it's been a really wild rut. And like I said, man, it's just been stretched out and kept these mature bucks really busy for more than the month of November. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina is just a different animal. You guys are very used to the 2 week, 2 week hammer rut, and here it just gets so stretched out. They'll get started in early to mid-October, and heck, I went in and changed batteries on a camera on Sunday, and there were 2 giant pawed out scrapes, it's cameras going off with, does coming through there, and right behind them are bucks, and that'll continue on for us until January. It'll keep right on going. It's wild in this Congaree River Swamp, how the rut is so weird.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you'll get pictures of 3 bucks together, and one of them's mature right now. So it's a very odd thing. And, we talked about kind of the ups and downs of the season. And I think I'll just dive in and then let you go, if that sounds all right to you, about kind of the ups and downs that I have experienced this year. And anybody that listened to the Chasing Giants podcast, I had to fill in for Don. I don't know if you knew this, but Don had a health episode and had to go into the hospital, and I think he's doing better. They got to run some more tests on him, but they thought at first that he had a mini stroke, which I'm not sure they have concluded that to be the case. But anyway, Terry messaged me when I was in Mexico and asked if I could hop on and fill in for him. So some of the stuff that I'm about to say, I said on that podcast, but we have some crossover, but some guys that don't listen to both. But obviously thoughts and prayers with Don, hoping everything goes well there.
Yeah, I wasn't aware.
Yeah. So what I had planned on doing this year, and I've mentioned this several times on the podcast, is focus on this deer here in South Carolina. And for the most part, that is what I have done, other than, the 10 days out in Kansas and then this trip I just got back from Mexico. And just going back to the, putting all your chips in the table for one deer, right? Lots of things can happen. That deer can get killed. The deer can vanish. He can get killed by natural causes. Another hunter can get him. There's a million things that can happen. And this year was really kind of crazy. Started with some unexpected pressure from another hunter, which I don't own the deer. He's I don't own the property. I'm not the only guy hunting the deer, so that can happen, obviously. So yeah, that happened. Hadn't really dealt with that in the past, but that was number one. Number two, we got the 100-year flood that came in and changed everything. You couldn't even get in the swamp for a couple weeks. Then, relocate the deer, and timber company comes in and, cuts the absolute heart of where I'm hunting, the whole thing. They clear cut it. And, nothing you can do about that either. The owners of the property have, a set schedule on when they can cut timber, how they're going to cut timber. And the guys have to get in there when it's dry and get the timber out of there. I'm sure they had planned on coming in there in October, and it got so wet from that flood that they couldn't get in there. And so this is the driest point, and the market's probably right. I don't know the timber industry very well, but it's a privilege for me to be able to hunt there. So the owner can, some guy said, why don't you go to them and say, hey, well, y'all want to wait till after January 1st? And I'm like, man, are you crazy? This is my best friend's property. If I went and asked him if he could wait and cut his timber in January, he'd tell me to kiss his butt. So, it's just one thing after another thing after another thing. And I think you have to keep a real positive mindset, because I got to say, there was definitely a valley in my season with all these things happening. And then I get a 2 or 3 pictures of a great buck in Kansas, fly out there and absolutely in the right spots to hunt him. And he just never got another picture, never saw him, nothing. It just didn't work. And then you fly home and, the 10 point is still there, but it's the middle of the night. The timber starts getting cut. And so it's just thing after thing after thing. And that's where you have to keep that positive mindset. And then, I went down to Mexico to the ranch that we hunt down there. And man, I had the best 3 days of hunting I've probably ever had in my life. I mean, it was just back to back 2 giant bucks. And, now you're at a peak. And so the bad times are never as bad as you think they are, and the good times never last as long as you think they will. And so it's just been kind of up and down for me, or it's been really mostly down this year. But in the long game, if you take a 5-year stretch, man, there's been some really good deer killed and a lot of really good hunts over that 5-year stretch. And I think, and I don't want to get on the social media craze here, but I think that's what stresses a lot of people out, right? I mean, you get on Instagram and you start scrolling through Instagram and it's big buck after big buck after big buck. But how many are you really seeing? You're seeing 50, 25, 50 big deer that got killed out of the 12 million people that are out there hunting. So it can kind of warp the sense of reality.
Yeah, it's easy to get discouraged looking at social media because it looks like everybody's killing giants except you or except me. And yeah, I mean, you're just seeing a fraction of it, but it still kind of plays with your mind, because every time you look at your phone, spend a few minutes scrolling around, it's big buck after big buck after big buck, and it starts to make you wonder, what's wrong with me? Do I really suck?
and there's nothing wrong with you. There's absolutely nothing. That's part of it. And again, your success could go way up if you just went to shoot a deer, right? If you just went out to shoot a buck.
Yeah.
But that's not the thing that really gets us fired up as far as guys that want to chase one particular deer.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to take that with a grain of salt, because when you focus on a particular buck, an individual animal, especially a mature one, I mean, you're shrinking your odds of success, by focusing on that one deer instead of just going out and shooting something. So, I mean, you're already paddling up creek, going after a specific buck. So you've lowered your odds there of success. But I mean, that's why we do it. We're not deer hunters anymore. We're hunting specific deer, taking it to the next level. And you have a lot more unsuccessful days than you do successful days. That's for sure.
No question about it. And I think the main question that the listener is going to have right now is, well, what do you do?
Yeah.
Right. What do you do in that situation? Because I guarantee you and I are not the only two people in that situation this season.
Yeah.
So the question to answer and the value to provide is, what do you do in that situation? And I'll speak for myself first here, and then let you have at it. But I just stay the course, right? Because the plan that I have executed over the years have worked, right? If it's real ruddy, I'm going to try to get in the tightest funnel that I can get in. If it's early season, I'm going to stay on the food. If it's late season, I'm going to stay on the food. There's some times when you get into that kind of early season before the rut to get on some scrapes, especially if you've got some history with where that deer starts showing up. But I think you just stay the course. I don't think you just go in and do crazy nonsense. Now, people will say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, but I'm expecting the same results, right? That have worked in the past, and that would be food early, scrapes, starting funnel type stuff, October, end of October-ish, tight funnels all day since November. And then, like the Ohio property that my buddy Jeff lets me hunt, I've been texting him, and, he's talking about the beans and food that we've got up there, and, transitioning some cameras off of scrapes and getting them on the food so that I might have a chance to crack one in Ohio late season. And so that's my answer is, I probably work a little bit harder at it when it gets tough. And I think you need to do that, as opposed to, man, I'll just wait till next year, because it only takes one sit, 1 hour, 30 minutes for it to all come together and work perfectly for you. And it's all in your brain, right? It's all keeping the attitude that, man, it can happen at any second.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can go from the from the worst season ever to the best season in one set. I've seen it happen time and time again, with the show and having, a dozen guys filming for us every year. You get to see a guy be down in the dumps because his deer got shot or he missed a big one or just something that a lot of guys would just take as my season's over and stick with it. And man, things can change like that. And, like you were saying, we have the same kind of tactics that have been proven over the years, and we're going to stay the course and keep doing it, keep hunting smart, keep watching the wind, keep doing all the things that have helped you be successful over the years. But I think this late season, it's really, like you were saying, it's all up here. It's in your mind. And it's easy to get discouraged looking at social media. It's easy to get frustrated chasing a big deer for multiple seasons. I think the best analogy I can think of is, and you've been to as many deer camps as I have, it's really funny where, you get to the end of a 6 or 7 day hunt, how low a guy can be from having a bad hunt. But then, the next round of hunters shows up and they're as high as they could be with hope and expectation, and they're going to be hunting the same property that, somebody else just hunted. But that difference in where the guy that's had no success for a week and the guy that just got there that's looking forward to a week of hunt, I mean, that's where you've got to be. That guy that just showed up to camp full of hope, full of expectations, excited about hunting. You got to try to maintain that, and you got to try to maintain that now we're going into almost the fourth month of season. And when you've had a bad season, it's tough to stay up there. But I mean, like you said, it can happen like that. And if you start getting down, if you start cutting corners, if you start not being sharp, maybe not shooting your bow, I mean, it's just one of those little things that you end up getting an opportunity late season. Could be the difference between success and failure if you really let it start getting into your head, and getting down, not staying sharp, not practicing, cutting corners, not staying clean, not paying attention to the wind. I mean, you really need to hunt harder and smarter now than you did 3 months ago. Because like I said, these deer aren't the same as they were in October. They've been chased and harassed for a few months, and they're playing, they're on their A game right now because they know what could happen. And you got to be the same, you got to be on your A game this late season. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's all right to take some time off, recharge your batteries. But you make a really good point about shooting, and staying on top of it. And you really have to have like a professional almost mindset with all of that. And I'll catch myself, coming home. Man, I'm not going to take my clothes off in the garage. I'm just going to go on in and go upstairs in my closet, lay them right there. I'll be ready to go tomorrow. Cut that corner. I'm not going to shoot today. I know that my bow's sighted in, or I'm going to shoot one arrow just at 25 yards just to make sure it's right. And man, I'll have to brag. I shoot my bow a ton. I shoot my bow a lot. I'm very fortunate. I've got a tower right back here in the back of my office. I can climb up in that. I got 3D targets all the way out to 60 yards. So I can shoot a ton. And I'm just going to make this point. The 10 point I just shot in Mexico was at 22 yards, perfectly broadside. And I could not have shot him any more through the guts than I did. It was a horrendous. I missed where I was aiming by 6 inches. Now I killed the deer, obviously, but you know what it was? It was a chip shot I took for granted, and I wanted to see, instead of following through with my shot, I wanted to see where I hit. So I just pushed my bow to the left, and my head, or pushed the bow to the right, and my head to the left. As I pulled through my shot. And I pushed the shot to the right, and I missed my spot by 6 inches. And it could have been an absolute disaster. If he had been facing the other way, it'd have been, in his shoulder or in front of his shoulder. So that's a real good point, is continuing to shoot and continuing to follow the process.
Yeah. You can almost compare it to, football, with these playoffs coming up and all these guys, all these teams except for Alabama in the playoffs this year have got to
Yeah,
play.
we'll get into that in just a second.
They've been playing, since August or September, and now going into the playoffs, they got to play better than they have all season. And that's really what we got to do, because you can't let your guard down. You can't forget about your equipment. I mean, this is where you're going to separate, a successful season from a terrible season. And if you get that one opportunity, you got to be prepared for it, just like you were in September. I mean, you can't be skipping any steps. Like I said, I hate to repeat myself, but I mean, you got to be on your A game more now than you did earlier in the season, just like these guys playing for, all the marbles here at the end of the season.
Yeah, the SMUs and the Indianas and the Clemsons and all these really Wells is in here. That's why I had to bring Clemson into the mix. All these powerful conferences that got into the playoffs this year, and how they talked about how strength of schedule and head-to-head mattered. But obviously, I mean, for this year, the poor old Gamecocks, man, that just – what happened to the poor old Gamecocks is, and I was asking Wells about it earlier, how did they do the ranking? Because you look at, and we don't need to get on the whole football thing, but while I'm venting, I'm going to throw this out there so we can get some hate mail. They value the head-to-head of Alabama and South Carolina, right? So Alabama finished the season ranked 9th, and South Carolina was ranked 13th, and they both had 9-3 records, but they valued the head-to-head. Well, SMU finished the season ranked 11th, and Clemson was ranked 12th, and South Carolina was ranked 13th. So they didn't value the head-to-head there. So it's bizarre. I know they don't have an easy job to do, and I know I'm an SEC Kool-Aid drinker, so I'll just move on from that. But good luck to the Buckeyes. I hope they do very well. I guess I'm going to have to hold my nose and say this. Go Dogs. Because I don't like the Dogs. Yeah. Maybe Texas, maybe Tennessee. I do like the Tennessee coach.
It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. To try to get back on subject here, like I said, this late season, it's really all about the little details, and when you were talking about, shooting, just looking at the little things, whether it's shooting, whether it's your stand, a lot of guys will have their stands hung, last year or maybe right before season, and stuff has changed in the woods, and it's probably not a bad idea to go back and take a look at your setups from ground level to see, if you're taking advantage of any available cover, because there ain't much left in the woods now. Because earlier in the season, I'm probably a little more focused on height and getting above, out of the line of sight. But now you really need to focus a little bit more on cover and backdrops and being silhouetted in your tree. And there might be some situations where a guy might want to adjust his stand to take advantage of available cover and make sure you're not silhouetted, because, there's no cover on the trees anymore, and you don't want to be sticking out like a turd in a punch bowl on the side of a tree where you're silhouetted. You might need to, go down to 15 feet or 18 feet and take advantage of, a different backdrop, or just, take a look at your setups, because stuff is so different late season. And like I said, it's all about the details. Your shooting, your setups, getting in and out, late season. You don't want to be getting busted coming in or going out, and, deer are focused on food again in these food sources late season. You don't want to be walking out of your stand after dark with deer all around you, because it's only going to take once or twice and they're going to be on to what's going on. I mean, having somebody come in a vehicle or a side-by-side to blow the deer out of the field so you can get out safely, I would rather do that than have deer watch me walk out of a field. It's all about the little details here late season. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was looking at one of my setups where I'm hunting this deer in the swamp, and earlier in the year, obviously we had a bunch of green and cover, and one thing that you can definitely do, I don't necessarily know that taking a whole bunch of brush up in the tree with you and creating a backdrop is such a good plan, because it even makes it more weird. And I don't know if it was Wade or Rock or one of them did that in Canada this year. They took a whole bunch of branches up in those quakies or aspen trees that are up in Canada and tried to make a nest up in there. And man, he said deer were popping out at like 100 yards and just eyeballing him because it was so weird. But what I think you can do, or what I know you can do, is, and Bobby does a lot of this, is if there's some saplings, maybe they're 4, 6, 8 inches around, you can take a ratchet strap and ratchet those things over to the tree that you're in and create some back cover with that. And this particular stand, I was looking at it, and there's 3 saplings that I could wrap a ratchet strap around and cinch that stuff over. And man, it'll make not a nest, but it's going to give me enough cover that, if I'm standing up and I'm leaning up against the tree, it's just a little bit more to break up any silhouette.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I got one stand in particular. Actually, it was a stand that I filmed 40 some deer out of last winter, when I was talking about the Osseo and how, with all those sets of eyes out there, nothing noticed to me at all. In that same tree, I mean, that's probably my best stand on my food plots for late season, and I can hunt it with a northwest wind, but I do feel like I'm a little open, and you don't want to go overboard like those guys did. And what I did is I took Lone Wolf, back in the day, bought a company called Camoflex, and it's like artificial limbs with leaves on it. And I just took like 3 or 4 of them, I think 4 of them, and used zip ties and zip tied them on the side of the tree where I was a little bit silhouetted, where the deer could come out of the woods and kind of see me, silhouetted a little bit. I just added just a little bit of brush right behind me. If I would have overdone it and it looked like a great big blob, of course it's going to alert deer, but it did just enough so that there's a little bit of something there, so that when I'm in the tree, it's going to help a little bit. Yeah, you don't want to overdo that kind of stuff right now. I mean, like I said, deer are too smart this time of the year to be making big changes. Little subtle.
Yeah, it's
probably better.
It's being hyper vigilant about the small details, and you got to go just a little bit further than you normally would. And circling back, and we're going to beat this to death, is keeping the mind right and staying in the game this time of year, if especially when it's been a rough year. I mean, go into your season a little bit. I mean, you started on the highest of highs in Ohio, and the season, you still got plenty of time, but I know it's been a mental battle for you. We've talked 30 times this hunting season, if not more, but walk through that, and guys will see exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's like all the years, for things to go wrong. I mean, everything that could have went wrong this year has happened. I mean, I got permission on a spot where I felt like I needed to be to kill this deer. And when I ended up getting the permission slip, I only got permission for half the property, which wasn't the half that I needed. And that kind of, tied one arm behind my back. Had surveyors move in on one side of me for a week and a half, 2 weeks, doing a topographical survey. So they're not going in and putting in a flag here, a flag there. They're marking every 20 feet and section the whole property off. I mean, flags every 20 feet in every direction. It was crazy. And I got timber guys in right now. They show up a week ago and tell me they're going to be, within 300 yards of where I'm hunting for the next 3 weeks. Widening a right of way for a utility from 60 to 100 feet and taking out a bunch of stuff. And I mean, it's just been one thing after another, just all these little things that you never expect it to happen. No way I could have foreseen it happening. And it's just the way that it's gone. I had buck I've been after for 4 seasons in Illinois that was completely missing in action this year just showed up during the last gun season. Must have got finally pushed out of his spot where he was staying, come back onto the farm. I couldn't get out there right away, but he daylighted 4 days in a row. I get out there on the 5th day and he's gone. And he's on the opposite end of the farm. I'm 99% sure he got hooked up with a hot doe because I seen him with a small yearling doe on camera on the other end of the farm, and I couldn't get to him. He's in a bedding area that I have stands in for a morning hunt, but I got to come in from the south, and I've had south winds all week, so I couldn't go up in there in the morning with the wind at my back. And in the evenings, they were going out into the neighbor's property, and I couldn't get to him there for the evening hunt. So I debated on, I think what Andre would have done was go in there and push him out, but then, I'm bow hunting during gun season. You don't want to start pushing deer around. Somebody with a gun's going to whack them. So, it's just been one thing after another, but, lots of season left. Got to stay positive. I'm not going to, curl up in the corner and cry about it. Because things could change, just takes one set.
Yeah. And this is not the first season like that. You and I have been through multiple seasons like that. What was it, a couple years ago that you'd had a rough one, and then like the last day of the Illinois season, you killed that giant 8-point with all the trash?
Yeah. Struggled all season long, didn't fill a tag, nothing going right. And yeah, that deer had come through the property in daylight, I think 2 or 3 times all season. All of them were on the red moon. We had a red moon the last few days of the bow season in Illinois. I went over on the 13th, and season ended on the 15th, and I shot him that first night. And yeah, it was the biggest buck to date in Illinois. So, it can happen like that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, it absolutely can. It's tough. It's tough because there's lots of elements. There are things that you can't control. The weather can suck. It can be brutally cold, and you're out there just day after day after day. And I got lots of buddies right now that I'm texting with as just like you, that are like, man, I'm burnt out. I'm having the worst year of my life. And then you got other guys that, are just knocking deer down. Doesn't matter what state they go to. And it's again and again and again, we keep saying it, peaks and valleys. It's never as bad as you seem, and it's never as good as it seems. And the bad times won't last forever, and the good times are certainly not going to last forever because they're so few and far between.
Yeah. It's it's not the most consistent sport, when it comes to that sort of thing. But you have to remain consistent in hunting smart, and hunting hard. Because, things can change in the blink of an eye, and man, you got to be ready for it. You got to be ready to take advantage of it. Nothing worse than going through an entire deer season with nothing going right, frustrated, beating your head against a tree, trying to figure out what you're doing, what you're not doing. And then it comes down to, the last minute of the game, and you get an opportunity and you blow it. That's the worst. You got to be ready right up until the last minute. So,
yeah, you push a marginal win. You're like, golly, I've done this 15 times. I got to have northwest, but this is straight north. It'll be okay. And you get in there, and sure as can be, he comes in straight south of you and blows at you, or you hadn't shot your bow in 2 weeks, and you're riding on the 4-wheeler or the bike, and it rattled your sight loose, and you shoot 2 feet over his back. All that stuff can happen, and what is it, Murphy's Law? If it can, it will. You gotta. Who was it? Was it Andre, or it was somebody we were talking to? Maybe it was me, you, and Andre did a podcast. I can't remember, but he said they were somewhere, and a big deer showed up, and the guy was like, all right, I got to get my stand out. I got to, get my hockey take or my stealth strips on my stand. I got to stealth strip my buckles, and I got to go shoot my bow. And And Andre just kind of walked to his ready room, and the guy was like, "Where are you going?" He goes, "Man, I had all that stuff done before the season started. I'm ready to go right now. I am fireman ready.
Mhm.
You got to have all your stuff, all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, and be ready to roll right then."
Yeah. Yeah. It's all those little things that you do when it doesn't matter that will make the difference when it's too late to do anything about it. I mean, yeah, you got to be ready, got to be on your A game. Don't start cutting corners on anything. You get an opportunity here late season, you got to be able to take advantage of it. So double check your equipment. Like I said, taking a look at your setups from ground level. Just leave nothing to chance.
So what's your plan the rest of the year?
Well, still waiting to see if a deer shows back up here at home, which he didn't show up until this week last year. So, I mean, I'm going to kind of hang around the house here and see what happens. I mean, there's a slight possibility something could show back up in Kansas or Illinois. So I'm not writing those places off yet, but really kind of just going to be focusing on here at home, and we'll see what happens. What about you?
So I'm obviously, our season goes out January 1st here, and I think I counted it up. I've got about 13 days left that I can hunt here in South Carolina. I've got the father-son trip back down to Mexico, and then I've got a trip to Texas. So I've got those coming up between now and the end of the year. So obviously, I'm going back to Mexico, so that place is unbelievable. So get back down there. My son Jack, he's going with me. So really kind of focus on trying to get him a good buck down there, and I'll hunt. I'm thinking about taking the recurve and trying to shoot my first buck with a recurve either in Mexico or Texas. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So I'm going to work hard the next, I guess, 7-8 days before we go, is shooting the recurve every day, trying to, I'd gotten decent with it, and, I just need to, that stuff is so perishable shooting that thing. I'm going to be working on that. And then late season will be, Kansas is pretty much out for me because I could only hunt those two small farms, and there's been nothing that's shown back up in there. And then concentrate on that little farm that Jeff, our buddy from Ohio, lets me hunt up there. There's some food on that place, and it backs up to a non-hunting area. So I really think a big one could show up in there. So yeah, that's kind of me. Mexico here in South Carolina. That 10 point is still around. I got pictures of him at 2 a.m. last night. And, there's obviously, we're getting towards the end of the season. So there's been a ton of pressure in the whole swamp, not just on this particular farm. Probably on this particular farm has had the least amount of pressure, but the surrounding farms have gotten pounded because they're hunt clubs, right? One of them's got 12 members. The other one, I think, has 40 members in the club. So that could help me, keeping that deer on this particular piece. So that's what I'll do. And, late season food, there's some cherry bark oak trees that have got some late acorns that'll be dropping. All the food plots got wrecked because of that flood. So there's a little bit of rye planted here and there. Maybe, get lucky on one of these funnels and have him come through. Like I said, they'll still be breeding into January here. So, maybe get him following a doe somewhere. So it's tough, but I had a really good high in Mexico, and that'll definitely get me positive through the rest of the season, ending on a positive note there, and then we'll see what happens in Mexico and Texas the rest of the year. So that's what I got cooking.
Gotcha. Well, hope you end up catching up to that swamp buck. I know he's been elusive this year.
He has the last 2 years. So yeah, we'll keep plugging away at him and see what happens. And, I'll obviously keep my cameras out, and heck, he may make it through it. He may be right back in there next year, and the game will start over. And so that'll be the plan. And that stuff happens. I mean, there's lots of bucks. I mean, how about that one out in Kansas? That deer's 9.5, and he's been hunted 4 or 5 years in a row by different people. I mean, and he's still alive, and and still there. And I'm guessing I have not heard from Seymour if he got killed during rifle, but as far as I know, that deer's still there. Now next year it'll be lucky if he's just a big cow horn. I mean, he's so old, he's just gonna have beams and some nubby brow tines probably.
Yeah, we'll see. It's amazing though how some of them big ones can manage to escape hunters year after year after year. They must have a hole they crawl in somewhere.
It's wild. It is really, really wild how they do that. Well, good, man. Well, I appreciate it. And anything else, or you good?
No, man. Just hope something that we said here today will help somebody save their season here at the last minute and be able to connect on a giant, because I know somebody's going to get an opportunity.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, hopefully some guys, including myself, will go out and shoot their bows some, look at some backdrops of where they're sitting, get some cover up in some trees, and can make it happen here at the end.
Yep. She ain't over till she's over.
No, sir.
Absolutely. Hasn't left the building yet.
Yeah. It's one step closer to your next arrow getting released. Every hour you're in the stand, you're that much closer.
Yep. That's a glass half full statement right there.
Yes, sir. Yep. Good, man. Well, go Dogs, and we'll see what happens with this football schedule the rest of the year.
Yep, she's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I got to be a bandwagon fan now.
Okay. OH.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.